in the winter of 1946, a young shepherd boy named Mohammed Aid Dib was searching for a lost goat in the limestone cliffs above the Dead Sea. He threw a stone into a dark opening in the rock. He heard pottery break. What he had just found, without knowing it, without any intention at all, was the most significant manuscript discovery in the history of modern biblical scholarship. Inside those broken clay jars were scrolls that had been sealed away, carefully, deliberately, by a community that believed what they were preserving was too important to lose and too dangerous to leave in the open. For 1900 years, those jars had held their secret, and among those scrolls was a passage that described something that most of the Christian world had never read. A place, a specific place, not heaven, not hell, not the grave, something in between. A hollow mountain divided into 4 separate chambers, each one holding a different category of souls, each one serving a different purpose in the divine accounting that has not yet concluded. One chamber, and this is the detail that stopped me when I first read it, one chamber has a spring in it, a running spring of water, in the mountain where the dead wait for the righteous. My name is Pastor Michael, and I am, like you, a fellow traveler, someone who also needs to hear God's voice in the darkness, and does not always find it easily. Tonight we are going into that mountain together. We are going to read what Enoch recorded in chapter 22 of the book that bears his name, a book the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has never stopped treating as scripture, a book that the Dead Sea Scrolls confirmed has existed in nearly identical form for more than 2,000 years. And we are going to walk through those 4 chambers, the way a person walks through a place that was built to make sense of the things we carry and cannot explain. In our last gathering, we walked through the 200 Watchers' descent on Mount Hermon, and tonight that same Book of Enoch appears again, but from a completely different angle. Not the angels who fell toward the earth, but the chambers beneath the earth, where the dead have been waiting ever since. There is a word in Ge'ez, the ancient language of the Ethiopian highlands, Mahder. It means dwelling place, chamber, the prepared room, and tonight, that word is our companion. Because 1 Enoch 22 tells us something that most people who call themselves Christians have never been told. That where the dead dwell is not a simple place. It is a prepared place. A Mahder. 4 of them, in fact. And one of them has a spring. Let us go there now, together, in the quiet of this night. The Book of Enoch is divided into 5 major sections, each with its own distinct theological focus. The first section, chapters 1 through 36, is called the Book of the Watchers. It covers the fall of the angels, the rise of the Nephilim, and Enoch's 2 heavenly journeys. We walked through that first journey last time. The Watchers on Mount Hermon, their descent, their names and their consequences. Tonight we follow Enoch on the second journey, and this second journey takes him not upward, but sideways into the hidden geography of the earth itself. Stay close, dear friend, because what Enoch sees in chapter 22 is a geographic detail so specific, so precisely described, that scholars at the Hebrew University who compared the Dead Sea Scrolls fragments with the Ethiopian Ge'ez manuscripts found almost no variation between a scroll written in 150 BC and a manuscript copied in 15th century Ethiopia. The same hollow mountain, the same 4 divisions, the same spring. Stay with me. Enoch 22 gegen 1,4 reads, "And thence I went to another place, and he showed me, in the west another great and high mountain, and of hard rock, and there were 4 hollow places in it, deep and very smooth. 3 of them were dark, and 1 bright, and there was a fountain of water in its midst. And I said, How smooth are these hollow places, and deep and dark to view." Then Raphael answered, one of the holy angels who was with me, and said unto me, "These hollow places have been created for this very purpose, that the spirits of the souls of the dead should assemble therein. 4 hollow places, 3 dark, 1 bright, a fountain of water in the midst. This is not metaphor. This is not symbolic language. Enoch is writing geography. 404, the Aramaic Enoch manuscript from Cave 4, Qumran. Among scrolls 4Q201 through 4Q212, these 12 Aramaic fragments of the Book of Enoch represent multiple manuscript copies made by the Qumran scribal community between 200 and 100 BC, when Joseph Milik, the Polish paleographer, who first analyzed the Cave 4 fragments in the 1950s, compared 4Q204 with the complete Ge'ez Ethiopic text preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. The 4-chamber passage showed near-perfect correspondence. Words, details, sequence, all matching across 22 centuries of separate manuscript transmission. This degree of textual stability is exceptionally rare in ancient literature. If you have ever wondered whether the Ethiopian Bible is reliable, whether the texts the Ethiopian Church preserved are the same texts that existed at the time of Christ, the Dead Sea Scrolls give you a concrete, verifiable answer for at least this passage. Yes, the Ethiopian version matches the oldest surviving copy, word for word. What the church in the highlands held is what the desert caves held, is what was originally written. Now, where exactly is this mountain located? The text says, "in the west." That is the full directional detail. Most scholars who work with the Enochic texts understand this west as referring to the cosmological west, the place where the sun sets, where the day ends, where the living world gives way to what lies beyond it. It is not a mountain you can find on a map. It is a mountain in the geography of the invisible world, the world that exists in parallel to ours, that holds what ours cannot hold, that persists when ours ends. The Aksumite Empire, the ancient kingdom in what is now northern Ethiopia, which produced and preserved the earliest Ge'ez manuscripts of the Book of Enoch, had a theological tradition of locating the mountain of the dead beyond the farthest western edge of the known earth, not in Africa, not in any specific country, beyond where the earth ends and the ordered creation thins out and gives way to the places prepared for what comes after. The Syriac tradition, specifically to Baruch, the Syriac Apocalypse of Baruch, written approximately 70 AD and preserved in Syriac manuscripts in Syria, describes a similar geography. In 2 Baruch chapter 21, the righteous dead are described As being in their chambers, the word used is the same. Conceptual word is Mahder, in Gez, reserved and prepared for the final judgment. Tu Baruch is not in the Western Christian canon. It is in the Ethiopian Orthodox canon. It is also quoted in the New Testament letter of Jude. Two completely independent text traditions, one preserved in Ethiopia, one in Syria, both describing the same geography, both using the same concept of prepared chambers, both pointing to the same mountain in the west, where the dead are held. That always moves me. The two manuscript traditions, agreeing without knowing they agreed. The Ethiopian highlands and the Syrian church, separated by language and geography and century, pointing to the same mountain. Maybe the text was too true to alter. Maybe it still is. Before we go deeper, dear friend, if this ancient geography is beginning to settle something in you that your day could not settle, a quiet subscribe means these chambers will still be open the next night you need them, and the night after that, you do not need to move. Just a thought. Which land are you listening from at this very moment? Now, let us descend deeper into the mountain. Let us look closely at what Enoch says the mountain looks like. Of hard rock. And there were 4 hollow places in it, deep and very smooth. Hard rock, deep, very smooth. These are not incidental details. They are architectural descriptors. Enoch is not saying this place is vague or undefined. He is saying it has texture, depth, material. The rock is hard, not soft earth that could shift or erode. The hollow places are deep, not shallow niches, but real chambers. The surfaces are very smooth worn, perhaps by the passage of a great number of things that have moved through them. Hold on, dear listeners, because the specific layout of the 4 sections and which one faces which direction was deliberately significant to the Enochic tradition. The direction each chamber faces tells us something about the nature of the souls inside it. We are reaching that geography in just a moment. 1 Enoch 22-9 gives us the most specific orientation detail. Raphael tells Enoch that the section whose face is toward the east, the chamber with the spring of water, is the one for the righteous. East, where the sun rises, where light first enters the day. The righteous face, the dawn. This is not coincidence in the Enochic text. Direction is theology. East is consistently the orientation of resurrection in ancient Jewish and early Christian tradition. Synagogues were often built facing east. Early Christian churches in the east-oriented prayer toward the east. The Book of Jubilees 2-8 describes the first light of the 4th day, the light by which the sun was made as the sacred light of the east. The righteous in their mountain chamber face that same light, not because they can see it, but because the mountain has been built in alignment with it. Their chamber is oriented toward what is coming. Beta Georius, House of St. George, one of the 11 rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, Ethiopia. Bete in Gies means house or dwelling place. Georgis is the gaze form of George. The 11 churches of Lalibela were carved directly into volcanic rock, not built on top of the earth, but cut into it. In the 12th century, under King Lalibela of Ethiopia. King Lalibela reportedly said he was commanded in a vision to build a new Jerusalem in the Ethiopian highlands, because Jerusalem had fallen to Saladin in 1187 AD. The rock-hewn churches, some still used for daily worship today, were carved in a pattern that reflects the geography of the sacred world. Underground passages connecting them, chambers within chambers, orientation toward the east. Ethiopian scholars have noted that the architectural language of Lalibela echoes the Enochic chamber tradition. Sacred spaces cut from hard rock, oriented toward meaning, deep and smooth and carved with purpose. The Lalibela churches are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Over 50,000 Ethiopian Orthodox pilgrims visit each year for Timkat, the Ethiopian Epiphany celebration. When those pilgrims walk the underground passages between the rock-hewn churches, they are, in a sense, enacting the Enochic geography, moving through chambers carved from hard rock, descending, passing through threshold spaces, emerging into a different kind of light. Now, what exactly are the 4 divisions? 1 Enoch 22 does not give us numbered labels. It describes them by their qualities and their occupants. Reading carefully from 22 to 513, scholars have identified Division 1. The bright hollow facing east with the spring. This is the chamber of the righteous dead, those who lived in faithfulness, who died at peace. The spring of water runs through it, living water, moving water, the water that Enoch's tradition consistently associates with divine provision and resurrection life. Division 2. One of the dark hollows. This is for those who died in their sins and were not punished during their earthly lives. They wait here, not in active torment, but in a suspension of comfort, holding the full weight of an accounting that has not yet been rendered. Division 3. Another dark hollow. This is the chamber Abel occupies, the only named soul in the 4-chamber passage. The unjustly murdered, those whose deaths were taken from them. From this chamber, a voice makes continuous petition to the heavenly court. A petition for justice that has not yet been fully answered. Division 4. The 4th hollow. For those who were both sinners and sufferers. Those who were complicit in the world of sin, and also afflicted by it. The morally complex. The ones who cannot be sorted easily into any other category. 4 chambers. 4 categories. Not 2. The entire Western Christian tradition after the Council of Carthage in 397 AD excluded the Book of Enoch from the canon, collapsed the afterlife into a binary, heaven or hell, saved or damned, rewarded or punished. The Enochic tradition preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church and confirmed by the Dead Sea Scrolls never accepted that binary. It said, human moral life is more complex than 2 categories. Justice must be more precise than a single verdict. And so it built 4 chambers. The Book of Jubilees, 729. Another text in the Ethiopian. Orthodox 8:1. Book canon reinforces this framework when it describes Noah's instruction to his sons. Judge every man according to his work. Weigh the poor man and the rich man, the one who oppresses and the one who is oppressed. Their judgment is not the same. Not the same. 2 people who both sinned in their lifetimes. One who caused suffering unpunished. One who suffered alongside, causing suffering. Received different accounting. Different chambers. Different waiting. Let that sink in. Their judgment is not the same. Yes. The 4-chamber framework isn't theology. trying to complicate things. It's justice refusing to be lazy. Of the 4 chambers, the first one is the one I return to most. Not because it is the most dramatic, not because it contains the most theological complexity, but because of the spring, and there was a fountain of water in its midst. One detail, 7 words, but it changes everything about how the chamber feels. Stay close, dear friend, because the spring of water in Chamber 1 is not incidental. It connects to a very specific tradition about what living water means in the ancient Near East, and to a text in the Psalms of Solomon that the Ethiopian Church reads at funerals specifically because of this passage. We are reaching that connection in a moment. In the ancient Near East, water was not simply a resource. It was theology. Springs, particularly underground springs that pressed up through rock and reached the surface without human engineering, were understood as the meeting point between 2 worlds. The underground world, dark, deep, hidden, holding what has been buried. The surface world, visible, inhabited, lit by sun and moon. A spring was where those 2 worlds communicated, where the deep sent something up to the light. In the Hebrew scriptures, springs are consistently associated with moments of divine provision in impossible places. The spring Hagar found in the wilderness when she and her son were dying of thirst. Genesis 21:19. The water Moses drew from rock at Meribah, Numbers 20:11. The springs of Elim, 12 of them, that refreshed the exhausted Israelites after crossing the sea. Exodus 15:27. God provides water in places where water should not be. Attributed to Solomon, written around 50 BC, preserved in Greek and Syriac, and included in the 8-1 book Ethiopian Orthodox Canon. The collection has no single Ge'ez name. It is called Mezmur Solomon, Songs of Solomon, distinguishing it from the canonical Song of Songs. The Psalms of Solomon are not in the Western Protestant or Catholic canons. They were excluded by the Council of Laodicea in 363 AD, decades before the Council of Carthage. The Ethiopian Church retained them. Psalm of Solomon 3:12 reads, "But they that fear the Lord shall rise to life eternal, and their life shall be in the light of the Lord, and shall come to an end no more." Ethiopian Orthodox funeral liturgy quotes this psalm, alongside 1 Enoch 22 as a paired testimony about the righteous dead and the spring that awaits them. Tonight, somewhere in Ethiopia, in a stone church on a hillside, in a monastery on a lake island, in a city neighborhood where a deacon prays for a family in grief, a priest is reading from the Psalms of Solomon and 1 Enoch 22 over the body or memory of someone who has died. They are reading about the spring. They believe the spring is real. And the text they are reading is the same text you are hearing tonight. The spring in Chamber 1 is running water, not a pool, not a cistern, not stored water, living water, mayim kayim, the same term Jesus uses in John 4:10 when he speaks to the woman at the well. In Hebrew theology, living water is water that moves, water that comes from a source that does not run dry, water that is alive in the sense that it has momentum, that it goes somewhere, that it carries something with it. The spring in Chamber 1 is not there to satisfy thirst. The dead do not thirst the way the living do. The spring is there as evidence of category, as proof that the souls in this chamber are in the right place, as the sound of something that will not stop, a sound that says, "You waited faithfully, and this place was built for you before you arrived." The Ethiopian Orthodox Church has a burial practice that most Western Christians know nothing about. When someone from an Ethiopian Orthodox community dies, their body is washed and prepared, and then, before burial, a deacon reads aloud from 1 Enoch 22 over the body, not as metaphor, not as poetry, as an address. The reading is directed to the departing soul. This is where you are going. This is what you will find. The 4 chambers, the mountain, the spring. The soul is given a map before it sets out. In the Aksumite Empire, the ancient Ethiopian kingdom that converted to Christianity under King Ezana around 330 AD, when Frumentius of Tyre was ordained the first bishop of Ethiopia by Athanasius of Alexandria, this practice of map-giving at burial was already established. The Aksumite Christians believed that Enoch's account of the chambers was not merely scripture about the dead in general. It was practical knowledge to be given to the dying specific. Not the dead go somewhere good, but here is the mountain. Here is the spring. Here is the angel who will be there. You will not arrive confused. Think of someone you have lost, dear friend. Someone whose life you knew well enough to say, they tried, they loved, they were not perfect. None of us are, but they chose, more often than not, the faithful path over the easy one. The path that cost them something. The path that did not always reward them visibly. 1 Enoch 22 says, "They are in chamber 1, facing east, toward the dawn that is coming, beside a spring that has been running since before any of us were born." Their waiting is not empty. It is accompanied by the sound of living water. If that is you tonight carrying someone in your memory whose faithfulness never got the recognition it deserved, 1 Enoch 22 is speaking directly about them. The spring is running, their chamber is bright, and the waiting has a sound. Chamber 2 is the chamber the Psalms of David were already describing, long before Enoch put language to its geography. Psalms 73 to 3:5, one of the great struggles of the Hebrew Psalter. "For I was envious of the arrogant, when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For they have no pangs until death. Their bodies are fat and sleek. They are not in trouble as others are. They are not stricken like the rest of mankind. The wicked prosper. They cause harm and face no consequence. They live full and comfortable lives, and then they die." And the psalmist wonders, where is the justice in that? 1 Enoch 22 answers that question with geography. Hold with me, dear friend, because the distinction between Chamber 2 and Chamber 4 is one of the most theologically significant differences in all of Enochic afterlife thought. And when you understand it, the two Baruch connection, I will show you how 2 completely separate text traditions arrived at the same answer to the same ancient problem. We are getting to that connection right now. From 1 Enoch 22:10-11. Then Raphael answered me, one of the holy angels who was with me, and said unto me, "This dark hollow, this is the place where the spirits of the sinners are separated, who were not righteous while they lived, and who do not cry out their complaint, who did not receive their punishment in their lives, who did not receive their punishment in their lives. This is the key phrase. Chamber 2 is not for people who sinned and faced consequences. It is not for people who hurt others and then suffered for it. It is specifically for those who caused harm and walked away untouched. Those who oppressed and were never held accountable. Those who lied and were never caught. Those who accumulated power through the suffering of others and spent their days in comfort. Chamber 2 holds the deferred account. 2 Baruch, the Syriac Apocalypse of Baruch, written approximately 70 AD, preserved in a single complete Syriac manuscript. The Ambrosianus, held in Milan, Italy, and in several Ethiopian Ge'ez fragments. Baruch, Bachoruch in Hebrew, means blessed. 2 Baruch is a pseudepigraphic text written in the name of Baruch, the scribe and companion of the prophet Jeremiah. 2 Baruch 21:23 reads, "Hear me, you who are in the treasuries of souls. Where are you hiding, and why do you hold back the reward of those who trusted in your word?" This passage is addressed to the souls waiting in the Bel, intermediate state, the same souls Enoch sees in the chambers. 2 Baruch 55:3 also names the angel Remiel as the one who presides over true visions, directly linking the keeper of the dead to the gift of revelation. The text is in the Ethiopian Orthodox canon and is read in the Ge'ez liturgy alongside 1 Enoch 22. The single complete manuscript of 2 Baruch was not translated into English until 1895, meaning that for nearly 1,800 years, this text was inaccessible to most of the Christian world. The Ethiopian Church had been reading it in Ge'ez throughout that entire period. The Cairo Geniza, a collection of Jewish manuscript fragments discovered in a Cairo synagogue storeroom in 1896, also contains fragments of related material, confirming that these traditions circulated across multiple ancient communities. Here is what Chamber 2 actually means for the one lying in bed tonight, who has spent years watching injustice go unpunished. The person who wronged you and faced nothing. The person who took from you and was never held accountable. The person whose prosperity has seemed, to your exhausted eyes, like a mockery of everything you were told justice meant. 1 Enoch 22 says, "The account is open. It is not closed simply because the earthly consequences were avoided. The avoiding of earthly consequences is, in fact, what defines Chamber 2. The person who was punished in their lifetime, who faced the consequences of what they did, who suffered for their wrong, they are not in Chamber 2. Their account was partially settled in their lifetime. The person who was never punished, their full account is waiting in Chamber 2. Unsettled, complete, deferred, not dismissed. The ancient rabbinical tradition had a concept for this that runs parallel to the Enochic chamber framework, the concept of Olam Haba, the world to come, in which every action that went unaccounted in this world would receive its precise reckoning. The Egyptian tradition, which deeply influenced the theological context in which early Ethiopian Christianity developed, described the weighing of the heart in the hall of Ma'at, the heart weighed against a feather, the scales tipping toward either the righteous journey or the consequence. Every ancient tradition that was close enough to the text to think carefully about justice came to the same conclusion. The absence of earthly consequences is not the absence of consequences. It is the deferral of them. Chamber 2 is where the deferred accounts are kept. The Book of Jubilees 5:15 says, "And for all those who corrupted their ways and their thoughts before the flood, the Lord said their judgment is reserved for the coming day." Reserved. The same language as the Enochic chambers. The same theology of the suspended account. The Aksumite Empire's stone inscriptions found in Aksum, the ancient capital of northern Ethiopia, some of which date to the 4th century AD, include formulas of divine warning to those who would desecrate the inscription's commands. May they have no righteousness before God, and may their account remain until the day of judgment. Until the day of judgment. Not, there will be punishment now, but the account will not be closed until then. This is Chamber 2 theology, embedded in an ancient stone monument. Did you catch that? The stone inscriptions of Aksum, the 4th century Ethiopian Empire, already using Chamber 2 theology. Account remains until the day. The Ethiopian tradition did not receive these ideas from the Book of Enoch as novel theology. They were already living inside them. Beautiful. In all of 1 Enoch 22's description of the 4 chambers, one soul is named. Only one. Every other occupant of the 4 chambers is described by category: the righteous, the sinners, the afflicted, groups, classes, types. But in Chamber 3, there is a name: Abel, the first human to die, the first murder victim, the one whose blood, Genesis 4:10 says, cried out to God from the ground before any prayer had been spoken. Do not drift yet, dear friend, because the reason Abel is the only named soul in the 4 chambers is a theological statement the text is making deliberately, and the connection between Abel's voice in Chamber 3 and the Aksumite Empire's understanding of martyrdom is one of the most moving things I have encountered in this entire tradition. We are going there right now. 1 Enoch 22 gegen 5:7. And there I saw the spirit of a dead man, and his voice went forth to heaven and made suit. And I asked Raphael the angel who was with me, and I said unto him, This is the spirit whose voice goeth forth and maketh suit. And what is the spirit whose voice thus complains and makes suit even unto heaven? And he answered me, saying, This is the spirit which went forth from Abel, whom his brother Cain slew, and he makes his suit against him till his seed is destroyed from the face of the earth, and his seed is annihilated from among the seed of men. Made suit. Make suit. Present tense. Abel is not crying in the past. He is petitioning now, at this moment, in continuous present action. Sahid the Ge'ez word for martyr, witness, used in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church's liturgical calendar for those who died for their faith or were killed unjustly. Sahid comes from the Arabic shahid, meaning witness, the same root as the Islamic term for one who dies in faith. The Ge'ez adoption of the word predates Islam and comes through the Semitic root shd, to see, to witness, to testify. The Ge'ez calendar of saints lists Abel as the first Sahid, the first witness, martyr. His feast day falls on the 12th of Nihes in the Ethiopian calendar. On this day, the 4-chamber passage from 1 Enoch 22 is specifically read in Ethiopian Orthodox churches, not as history, but as current liturgical acknowledgement that Abel's suit is still active, still being heard, still awaiting its final resolution. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church today has a rich tradition of martyrology, a theology of those who were killed unjustly that is directly rooted in the Enochic understanding of Chamber 3. When Ethiopian Christians die in conflict or persecution, as many have throughout the country's complex history, the theological framework says they join the chamber where their suit is heard, not silence, not void, active, ongoing, registered testimony. The text says Abel makes suit against Cain until his seed is destroyed from the face of the earth. This has disturbed many readers over the centuries. Is Abel asking for the destruction of an entire lineage? The Ethiopian tradition's reading is more nuanced. Cain's seed in this passage is not understood as Cain biological descendant. It is understood as the continuation of Cain's principle, the principle of violence that answers, I am not my brother's keeper. The principle that refuses accountability, that denies relationship, that treats the other person as an obstacle rather than a person. Abel is not petitioning for the destruction of people. He is petitioning for the end of a world order built on that principle. The suit is against the architecture of violence, not against the individuals who live within it. The rock-hewn churches of Lalibela were built, in part, as tombs, as places where the faithful dead would be, buried within the sacred architecture itself. Walking through the underground passages of Lalibela today, the narrow rock corridors connecting one church to the next, is to walk a path that was designed to feel like the passage through the chambers. Ethiopian pilgrims who make the 3-day walk to Lalibela, for Timkat or Maskell, describe the underground passages as places where they feel the presence of the waiting dead. Not frightening, not oppressive, but present, companionable, as if the walls remember who has been laid in them. This is the theological logic of Chamber 3. The voice of the unjustly killed is not silenced by death. It is relocated from the ground, where Genesis says, it cried, to a specific chamber in the geography of the unseen world, where an angel named Remiel can hear it, where Raphael can explain it to those like Enoch who are given eyes to see, where the heavenly court receives it as active petition. The Book of Jubilees 4-3 puts it directly. The blood of his brother Abel called out from the earth, accusing him because he had slain his brother. Accusing, legal term. The suit is open. The case is ongoing. And the 4 chambers exist, in part, so that such suits can be heard in proper order, not dismissed, not forgotten, but held until the appointed time that one Enoch, 22-4 names, as the great judgment. That always stops me. That Abel is the only named soul. Every other occupant is a category. But Abel is a person. A specific person with a specific name and a specific voice that is still right now making an active petition. Maybe that specificity is the most comforting thing in this text. The heavenly accounting does not deal only in categories. It deals in persons. I want to spend a long time in Chamber 4, not because it is the most dramatic, not because it contains the most famous souls, but because it is, I think, the chamber that most of us will find ourselves relating to most honestly. Chamber 4 is the chamber of the complexly situated, the morally entangled, the ones who both caused harm and received it, the ones who were neither purely righteous nor purely unaccountable. The ones who tried and failed and tried again, in a world they did not design, under pressures they did not fully choose. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here with me, because the Syriac tradition of Tu Baruch and the Coptic tradition of Alexandria both have specific theological language for chamber for souls that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church synthesized into something quite extraordinary. That synthesis is coming in just a few moments. From 1 Enoch 22:12-13, there are those who make their suit, and there are those who are judged among the dead who are already judged, and these bear the torment and pain of those who created the iniquity, though they themselves do not cry out, because they have enough punishment in themselves. They have enough punishment in themselves. This phrase is doing remarkable theological work. It is saying, these souls carry their own accounting. They are not in a state of deferred external judgment, the way Chamber 2 souls are. They have an internal weight, the weight of a life that was both shaped by harm and that caused harm. And that weight is itself a form of ongoing experience. Theotokos in Greek, translated into Ge'ez as Betul Mariam, Virgin Mary. Theotokos means God-bearer, the one who bore God. In the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria, the theological parent of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the Theotokos is central to the theology of the dead. The Coptic tradition, which transmitted many theological frameworks to the Aksumite Church, developed a specific understanding of the intermediate state as one in which the prayers of the living, particularly prayers offered through Mary, could speak comfort into the experience of souls like those in Chamber 4. The Coptic deacon Athanasius of Alexandria, who ordained Frumentius as the first bishop of Ethiopia into 330 AD, brought this theology of intercession for the complex dead directly into the Ethiopian Church's founding theology. Frumentius of Tyre then established the practice in Aksum, where it became part of the Aksumite liturgical tradition. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church today holds that prayers for the dead, the Tazkar memorial services, are especially important for Chamber 4 souls, not to change the nature of their situation, but to express solidarity with those whose moral lives were complicated. The theology is, compassion does not require simplicity. You can hold complexity in prayer without resolving it. Let me try to describe what I mean by complexly situated in human terms, because it is easy for a theology to abstract away from the actual people it describes. Think of someone who grew up in an environment of violence and learned to survive using the tools that environment provided, tools that were harmful to others, but also the only tools available. Think of someone who participated in an unjust system because the cost of refusing was too high, and who was also harmed by that system while participating in it. Think of someone who loved and wounded simultaneously, whose love was real, but whose wounds were also real, and who died having never fully sorted out the difference. These are not unusual people. These are most people. These are, in various moments, all of us. The binary afterlife gives these people nowhere to go. Either heaven, which does not account for the wounds they caused, or hell, which does not account for the wounds they received. The four-chamber framework refuses that choice. It says, there is a place that holds complexity, a chamber for those who contain multitudes, a dwelling that does not demand you be simpler than you are, in order to be held. This is not a comfortable place. They have enough punishment in themselves, but it is a precise place, and precision is its own form of dignity. The Coptic Church in Alexandria, where the theology that shaped early Ethiopian Christianity was formed, had a phrase for this. Mercy accompanies the accounting, not mercy replaces the accounting. But wherever the accounting goes, mercy goes alongside it. The same God who weighs also loves. The same justice that differentiates also cares about what it finds in each chamber. The four-chamber framework is not mercy without justice. It is not justice without mercy. It is both, held together, refusing to be simplified into either alone. If that is you tonight, if the complexity of your own moral life sometimes feels too tangled to bring to God, the four-chamber framework says God built a chamber for the tangled ones, not to trap them there, but to hold them precisely until the great accounting can be precise enough to see them fully. You are not too complex for the geography. Can I be honest with you for a moment? There have been long stretches in my life, months sometimes, where I have gone through all the motions of faith and felt almost nothing. The prayers, the study, the words, but no sense of water running anywhere. No spring. Tonight's text is the one I return to in those seasons, because the spring in Chamber 1 is not dependent on whether I can feel it. It runs whether I sense it or not, and that steadies me, dear friend. Maybe it steadies you too. Every archive needs a keeper, not just a building to hold the collection, but a person who knows what is in it, who can find what is needed, who ensures nothing is misfiled or lost. The four hollow chambers of 1 Enoch 22 have such a keeper. His name is Remiel, and he is one of the least discussed figures in the history of Christianity outside of Ethiopia. Stay close. We're not done yet, because the reason Remiel was removed from the archangel list in Western Christianity in 745 AD is directly connected to the exclusion of the Book of Enoch. Understanding that connection reveals a systematic pattern in early church canon formation that has shaped what most Christians do and do not know about the angelic world. We reach that connection now. 1 Enoch 20-8 gives us Remiel's assignment in one sentence. Remiel, one of the holy angels, whom God set over those who rise. Those who rise. His domain is resurrection. His charge is the souls that are waiting, precisely waiting, for the moment of rising. He is not a warrior angel, not a message bearer, not a healer, not an intercessor in battle. He is the angel of the threshold between waiting and rising, the guardian of the interval, the one who has been stationed at the chambers since before the first human soul arrived. Remiel in Gez Remiel. The name has two proposed etymologies. One from Hebrew Ram, thunder, plus El, God, equals thunder of God. Two from Hebrew Rahem, mercy divided by compassion, plus El equals mercy of God. Ethiopian liturgical tradition uses the second meaning, Remiel, as the angel of merciful resurrection, the one whose governing quality in his keeping of the dead is compassion. Remiel appears in 1 Enoch 20-8, keeper of those who rise. 2 Baruch 55-3, angel of true visions, and the Sibylline oracles 2 contre 215, angel of resurrection, the Synod of Rome, in 745 AD under Pope Zachary, officially reduced the Western archangel list to 3: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Remiel, Uriel, Sarakael, and Ragel were removed. The stated reason was to prevent excessive veneration of angels. The actual effect was to remove the 4 angels whose functions were most closely tied to the Enochic texts, the books that Carthage had already excluded from the Western canon 348 years earlier. The Ethiopian Church, operating under Alexandrian theology and never bound by Rome's synodal decisions, retained all 7. In Ethiopian Orthodox churches today, Remiel is prayed to specifically in funeral liturgy, particularly the Mazmur le Motaner, the Psalm for the dying, as the angel who receives the departing soul and guides it to its correct chamber. His name has been spoken continuously in Ethiopian worship for at least 17 centuries. The removal of Remiel from the Western Archangel list in 745 AD was not accidental or arbitrary. It was the completion of a theological arc that had started at the Council of Carthage in 397 AD, when the Book of Enoch was formally excluded from the Western biblical canon. You cannot keep Remiel in the Archangel list while also excluding the book that defines his function. If the Book of Enoch is not scripture, then the keeper of the 4 chambers has no chambers to keep. And if he has no chambers to keep, he has no clearly defined function. And if he has no function, he becomes theologically incoherent in a tradition that has no map of the waiting dead. So Rome removed him, and the 4-chamber map disappeared from Western Christianity. And for 1200 years, the afterlife in Western Christian tradition was simplified to heaven or hell, here or there, now or never. The Ethiopian highlands held something different. In the stone churches of the Aksumite Empire, carved from volcanic rock oriented toward the east, filled with Gea's chant and lamplight and incense, Remiel's name was spoken at every funeral, not as theology being preserved for academic posterity, but as practical pastoral address to the departing soul. Remiel, angel of those who rise, receive this soul into the prepared chamber. Let the spring run for them. Keep them until the great day. The Book of Tobit, chapter 12, 15, gives us one of the clearest windows into how the early Ethiopian church understood the 7 archangels. Raphael reveals himself to Tobit, "I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels who stand in the presence of the Holy One." 7, not 3. Tobit is in the Ethiopian canon. It is read in the Ethiopian liturgy, and the Ethiopian Church has always understood those 7 angels to include Remiel, whose specific assignment makes him the most relevant of all 7 for the community gathered around a grave or praying for the recently departed. Did you pick up on that? Remiel was not forgotten. He was removed deliberately by a tradition that had already decided to remove the book that gave him a function. The Ethiopian Church never removed the book, and so Remiel's name was never erased from their prayers. He has been watching over the chambers, named and acknowledged, this entire time. The guide through the 4 chambers is Raphael, not Remiel the keeper whose assignment is to stay. Not Michael the warrior whose assignment is to fight. The guide is the healer, and there is something deliberate in that assignment that I have carried with me since I first understood it. The one who heals is the one who explains where the wounded wait. Healing and knowledge are not separate gifts here. They arrive together, through the same angel. Don't drift away. Stay with me. Because Raphael's role in the chamber passage directly connects to his role in the Book of Tobit, and together these two texts show us something about how the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition understands the relationship between physical healing, spiritual understanding, and the geography of the dead. That connection is right ahead. From 1 Enoch 22 gegen 19. And I asked Raphael the angel who was with me, and I said unto him, This is the Spirit whose voice goeth forth, and maketh suit. And he answered me, saying, This is the Spirit which went forth from Abel, whom his brother Cain slew, and he makes his suit against him till his seed is destroyed from the face of the earth. Notice the structure of the exchange. Enoch sees something he does not understand. He asks. Raphael answers, not reluctantly, not with conditions, not with questions about whether Enoch has earned the right to this knowledge. He simply tells him what it is. The healer heals by explaining, by making the invisible visible, by providing the map that takes away the terror of the unknown. Tobit, Injeds. Tobit, a deuterocanonical book set in the Assyrian exile, featuring the angel Raphael, in disguise as a human traveling companion. The name Tobit comes from the Hebrew Tobiah, God is my good. The Gez title maintains the Hebrew phonology closely. The Book of Tobit is in the Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, and Ethiopian Orthodox canons. It was excluded from the Protestant canon at the Reformation. Luther's 1534 German Bible placed it in the Apocrypha. In Tobit 12:15, Raphael reveals his identity and says, I am Raphael, one of the 7 holy angels who present the prayers of the saints and who enter before the glory of the Holy One. This presenting of prayers is directly connected to his role in the chamber passage as the one who receives Enoch's question and presents the information that allows Enoch to understand what he is seeing. The Ethiopian Gez text of Tobit is preserved in its earliest form in the Tanahaik manuscripts, a collection held at the Haik Estefanos monastery in northern Ethiopia, dating to the 14th century but representing much older texts. Ethiopian Christians today pray to Raphael, specifically for the interpretation of difficult or confusing situations, not just physical healing, but the healing of confusion and the gift of understanding. Help me understand what I am looking at is an authentic Raphael prayer in the Ethiopian tradition, and it comes directly from the scene in 1 Enoch 22, where Enoch does exactly that, asks Raphael to explain what he does not understand. There is a practice in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church called Lectio Divina, the slow, meditative reading of Scripture that has a particular relationship with the Raphael passages in both Tobit and 1 Enoch 22. When an Ethiopian monk at the Haik Estefanos monastery sits with the text of 1 Enoch 22, he does not rush through it. He reads a few words. He stops. He waits. He is, in essence, imitating Enoch's posture, seeing something he does not fully understand, and then being willing to wait for the explanation. The silence between phrases is not empty. It is the space where Raphael speaks. Why is the healer the one who explains the chambers? I think it is because the terror of the unknown is itself a wound. When someone we love dies and we do not know where they have gone, when the grief of loss is compounded by the uncertainty, by the lying awake wondering if they are alone, if they are suffering, if what was good in them was counted for anything, that not knowing is its own injury. Raphael does not just walk Enoch through the geography. He heals Enoch's fear by providing the map. And in providing the map, he heals us as well. Every reader who has ever sat with the Book of Enoch in the darkness and asked the same questions Enoch asked. What is this? Where are they? Why? The healer answers. The Dead Sea Scrolls community at Qumran had its own Lectio Divina practice described in the Manual of Discipline, 1QS, as a regimen of communal text reading, night vigils, and meditative reception of sacred documents. The Songs of the Sabbath Sacrifice, one of the more extraordinary liturgical texts found at Qumran, describes angelic choirs singing in the seven heavens and echoes the multi-layered angelic hierarchy of which Raphael and Remiel are part. The Qumran community that preserved the Enoch fragments in clay jars also practiced the posture that the Ethiopian monastery monks practice. Slow reception of ancient text, with space for what lies between words. Both communities, centuries and continents apart, found in Raphael's explanation of the chambers the same gift, the map that heals the fear of not knowing. Let that settle, dear friend. Help me understand what I am looking at. That is Enoch's prayer. That is the Raphael prayer. And it is answered, not eventually, right away. In the text, the healer explains. The fear lessens. The map appears. I want to take a step back from the specific text of 1, Enoch 22, and spend time inside the tradition that held it. Because the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church is not a museum. It is not an archive or an academic institution. It is a living community of more than 36 million people who have been praying these texts, singing these texts, burying their dead inside these texts for 17 unbroken centuries. Their theology of the dead is one of the most coherent and complete afterlife frameworks in all of Christianity, and it deserves to be understood on its own terms. Walk with me through this, dear friend, because the Ethiopian Orthodox concept of Tazkar, the memorial service for the dead, contains a specific prayer phrase that I have never heard taught outside of Ethiopian Christianity, and it changes how I understand what I am praying. When I pray for someone who has died, that phrase is a few moments ahead. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church was formally established around 330 AD, when Frumentius of Tyre, a Phoenician Christian, who had been shipwrecked off the Ethiopian coast as a young man, was ordained the first bishop of Ethiopia by Athanasius of Alexandria. This timing is significant. 330 AD is 3 years before the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Wait, I have that backwards. The Council of Nicaea was 325 AD. Frumentius's ordination was approximately 330 AD. The Council of Carthage, which excluded the Book of Enoch, from the Western Canon was 397 AD, the Ethiopian Church was already fully established before Carthage made its canon decision, and it was established through the Alexandrian theological line, not the Roman Latin line. Carthage's decision was binding for the Western Church. It was not binding for Alexandria. And since Ethiopia's Christianity came from Alexandria, the Book of Enoch remained in the Ethiopian canon, without interruption. The Ethiopian Memorial Service, Tazkar, the Ethiopian Orthodox Memorial, service for the departed, held on specific days after death. Tazkar, also spelled Taskaro, comes from the Ge'ez root tzkr, meaning to remember, to commemorate, to acknowledge the continuing existence of the one who died. The Tazkar is held on the 3rd day, 7th day, 12th day, and 40th day after death, and then annually on the anniversary. Each Tazkar service includes reading from 1 Enoch 22 and the Psalms of Solomon, distribution of food to the poor on behalf of the deceased, and specific prayers addressed to Remiel and Raphael. The 40-day Tazkar parallels the Ethiopian belief that the soul spends 40 days in active transition, a belief rooted in the Enochic tradition of the soul, finding its chamber before settling into its appointed waiting place. Tazkar is still widely practiced in Ethiopian Orthodox communities today, both in Ethiopia and in the diaspora across the United States, Europe, and Australia. Ethiopian Orthodox Christians in cities like Washington, D.C., London, and Melbourne hold Tazkar services in community halls and church basements, reading from Ge'ez texts about the 4 chambers in the same cities where most of their neighbors have never heard of the Book of Enoch at all. The Tazkar Prayer I mentioned in the retention loop is this phrase spoken over the food distributed on behalf of the deceased. Nefsu b'me'arinet yefert. May her soul be judged in mercy, not may she be in heaven, not may he rest in peace. May his soul be judged in mercy. The prayer acknowledges, without flinching, that there will be a judgment. The soul is waiting for that judgment. What the community prays is not the avoidance of judgment, but that when it comes with mercy. This is the theology of the waiting dead. It does not pretend the judgment is not coming. It does not pretend the chambers are not real. It does not simplify the moral complexity of a human life into a premature verdict. It holds the truth that there will be a reckoning, and asks that the reckoning be merciful. And it holds that truth while continuing to love the dead, while feeding the poor on their behalf, while reading the text that describes where they are, while naming the angels who keep watch over them. This is 17 centuries of theological maturity, held in the Ethiopian highlands, practiced every time a community gathers around a loss, and reads from the book that the West put in a locked room. The Book of Jubilees, 738 canonical in the Ethiopian Church, records Noah teaching his sons after the flood. He commanded them to observe the feasts of their fathers, and to observe the feasts of those who died before them, for their bones were preserved in the earth, and their spirits rested in peace. The bones preserved, the spirits at rest, the living holding feast in their memory. This is the Tazkar pre-written, before the Tazkar was formalized, before the church was founded. The principle was already in the canon. You do not stop relating to the dead just because they have moved into a different chamber. Did you catch that prayer? May his soul be judged in mercy. Not, may she skip the judgment. Not, may he be declared innocent without examination. But, may the judgment which is real and coming be accompanied by mercy. That is one of the bravest, most honest prayers I know. We opened this night with a shepherd boy and a broken jar. Let us return there now, because the story of what the Dead Sea Scrolls did for the credibility of the four-chamber passage is one of the most remarkable stories in modern biblical scholarship, and it begins with a question that had troubled historians for centuries before the scrolls were found. Is the Book of Enoch actually ancient, or is it a medieval forgery composed or heavily edited in the first few centuries of Christianity, and then falsely attributed to the antediluvian Enoch? To give it false authority? Let's stay together in this moment, because the Dead Sea Scrolls answered that question decisively for the four-chamber passage. The specific word comparisons between the 2,200-year-old Aramaic fragments and the 15th century Ethiopian Ge'ez manuscripts produced a conclusion that changed how scholars talk about the Ethiopian Church's preservation of the Enochic tradition. That conclusion is right ahead. In 1952, the Jordanian Department of Antiquities allowed the École Biblique in Jerusalem, under the scholar Roland de Vaux, to conduct the first systematic excavation of Cave 4 at Qumran. Cave 4 was by any measure the most significant of the 11 caves. It contained the fragments of approximately 500 different manuscripts, roughly a quarter of all the Dead Sea Scrolls material ever found. Among those 500 manuscripts were 12 copies of the Book of Enoch. 12, not one preserved copy. 12 separate manuscript copies of the same text, indicating that the Qumran community had multiple scrolls, used them regularly, copied them when they wore out, and regarded the Book of Enoch as living scripture, not a curiosity. For Q201, the oldest surviving Aramaic manuscript of the Book of Enoch, from Cave 4, Qumran. The fragment preserves portions of 1 Enoch 1, 12, the very beginning of the Watchers section, in Aramaic script, dated by paleography to approximately 150 BC. This makes it more than 2,200 years old, when the Polish scholar Józef Milik finally published the Aramaic Enoch fragments in 1976. Books of Enoch, Aramaic fragments of Qumran Cave 4, Oxford University Press. The comparison with the complete Ge'ez Ethiopic text produced a striking result. The four-chamber passage of 1 Enoch 22 showed a remarkable degree of textual agreement between the 200 BC Aramaic and the 15th century AD Ethiopian text. The same geographic details, the same 4 divisions, the same spring, the same voice of Abel, the same designation of Raphael as the explaining guide. 22 centuries of manuscript transmission across 2 completely separate cultural and linguistic lines, and the text describing where the dead wait, arrived at the modern reader in essentially the same form. It left its author. The Israel Antiquities Authority has made high-resolution images of the Dead Sea Scrolls fragments freely available through the Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls digital library, including 4Q201. Anyone tonight can look at the 2,200-year-old parchment. You can see the Aramaic script with your own eyes. The text about the chambers and the spring that you are hearing described tonight is visible in its original script, in the handwriting of a scribe who lived before Christ. Online, free, available, waiting to be seen. Why does textual stability matter for a sleep meditation? Because one of the most common forms of doubt that keeps people awake at night, that circling 2 a.m. version of doubt, is the suspicion that the things we have been taught to believe might be built on uncertain foundations, that the texts might have been edited, that the meaning might have been changed, that what we received as ancient truth might actually be a much more recent construction. The Dead Sea Scrolls give a specific, concrete answer to that specific suspicion, at least for this passage. The four-chamber text was not invented by medieval Ethiopian monks. It was not added by early Christian editors. It was not fabricated by the Alexandrian Church. It was there, in a clay jar, in a cave above the Dead Sea. Before Christianity began, the community that sealed those jars were themselves expecting the great judgment that 1 Enoch 22 describes. They were, in the language of the scrolls themselves, the sons of light, a small remnant of the righteous, surrounded by what they called the sons of darkness. When the Roman army destroyed Qumran in 68 AD, many of the community members were killed. They went into the chambers they had been studying. From the text that described where the dead wait to the place that text described, and the jars they had sealed, the manuscripts they had trusted to the stone, remained in the caves for 1900 years, until a shepherd boy's thrown stone broke the jar open, and the text about the spring found its way back into the light. That always moves me. The community that sealed the scrolls went into the very chambers they had been reading about, and the text they preserved confirmed, for us, that the spring was real before any of us were born. The jar was sealed because they trusted the stone, and the stone held. For 1900 years, it held. The Apostles' Creed contains a line that most Western Christians read past without stopping. He descended into hell. 3 words. They sit between was crucified, dead, and buried, and the 3rd day he rose again from the dead. In the Western Church, those 3 words are often treated, as a side note, a placeholder, an old formula that no one quite knows what to do with anymore. In the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, those 3 words are one of the most celebrated events in the entire liturgical year, because they understand exactly what those words mean. Remain with me, my friend, just a little longer. Because when you apply the 4-chamber map of 1 Enoch 22 to the harrowing of hell, the theological event that happens between Good Friday and Easter becomes something completely different from the vague "he went somewhere" that most Christians have been taught. The Ethiopian liturgy for Holy Saturday tells us specifically which chambers were entered and what was said in each one. That is 2 minutes ahead. The theological event known as the harrowing of hell, from the Old English harrow, meaning to disturb or plunder, describes Christ's descent into the realm of the dead between his crucifixion on Friday and his resurrection on Sunday. The biblical basis is 1 Peter 3:18-20. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. After being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits. Imprisoned spirits. That phrase matches almost exactly the language the Book of Enoch uses for the souls, held in the 4 chambers of the mountain, the imprisoned spirits of 1 Peter 3, the souls in the hollow places of 1 Enoch 22, one text pointing to the same geography as the other, Yedre Gena, the Ethiopian Orthodox, theological term for the harrowing of hell, observed on Holy Saturday in the Ethiopian liturgical calendar. Yedre means rescue or plunder for good, the act of taking something valuable out of a dangerous place. Gena refers to the before time, the darkest hour before dawn, together. The rescue that happens in the darkest hour. The Ethiopian Orthodox Holy Saturday Liturgy, the Ge'ez service that commemorates the harrowing, is one of the longest services in the church calendar, lasting from sunset Saturday to sunrise Sunday. It includes direct quotations from both 1 Peter 3 and 1 Enoch 22, read side by side as paired witnesses to the same event. The Ge'ez liturgy includes a dramatic passage in which Christ addresses the 4 chambers, individually the righteous, the suspended sinners, the murdered, the complexly afflicted, with a different message for each. This practice dates to at least the 8th century AD and is unique to the Ethiopian Church. Ethiopian Orthodox Christians today still observe the 5-5-hour Easter fast, broken by the Yedre Gena service. In communities around the world, from Addis Ababa to Nairobi to Washington, D.C., this service is held with the 4-chamber passage as its central Enochic text. The event being celebrated is understood as Christ entered the hollow mountain. Christ spoke into each chamber. The waiting began its final countdown. Now, let us follow the logic carefully. If Christ descended into the realm of the dead, into the hollow chambers beneath the mountain, which chambers did he enter? The Ethiopian tradition says, all 4. Chamber 1, the righteous waiting in light. They had been waiting since before the flood, since the time of Noah and Abel and all the faithful of every generation before the resurrection. Christ's descent into their chamber was not a rescue from suffering. They were not suffering. They were waiting. His entrance was an announcement. The one you have been waiting for has arrived. The clock on your waiting has now entered its final period. Chamber 2, the unaccountable sinners. Their descent into suspended accounting continues, but now they have received word that the judge has arrived, that the great judgment, long deferred, is now in motion. Chamber 3, Abel's chamber. The chamber where the first murder victim has been making continuous suit since before the flood. Can you imagine what the arrival of the one who has authority to finally close the case meant to the one who filed it? Your suit has been heard. The advocate has arrived. The case is moving toward its resolution. The first cry of blood from the ground, finally heard by the one who can answer it completely. Chamber 4, the complexly situated. I see your complexity. I have come to stand alongside it. The accounting that comes will be precise enough to hold it. The Kibra Nagas, the Book of the Glory of Kings, the great Ethiopian narrative that records the covenant between Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and the Solomonic line of Ethiopian kings connects this moment to the theology of divine dwelling. The Ark of the Covenant was the promise, God dwelling in a physical, portable presence among humanity. The harrowing of hell is the fulfillment, God descending into the deepest place of human experience, the realm of the waiting dead itself. and announcing that no part of the created world, not even the invisible chambers of the mountain, is beyond the reach of the divine presence. The ark was the dwelling, the harrowing was the descent, the resurrection was the return, and the 4 chambers are still holding their occupants, more informed now than before, but still waiting for the great judgment that 1 Enoch 22:4 says is coming. Take that in for a moment. Every chamber received a different message, because every chamber needed a different word. The righteous. The day is set. The unaccountable. The reckoning is in motion. The murdered. Your suit is heard. The complex. Your nuance is seen. 1 God. 4 messages. 4 chambers. That is justice that refuses to be blunt. There is a place in the Ethiopian highlands in the mountainous Lasta region of northern Ethiopia where human hands carved a city of churches directly into volcanic rock, not built on top of the ground, not constructed from quarried stone placed on a foundation, carved down into the living rock, dug from above, hollowed out, creating chambers, sacred chambers inside solid stone. This place is Lalibela, and the 11 rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, built in the 12th century under King Lalibela, are, I am convinced, one of the most beautiful architectural expressions of the 4-chamber theology in human history. Keep your heart here with me, because the underground passageways that connect the 11 Lalibela churches were designed with a specific theological intention that directly mirrors the architecture of the 4 hollow chambers, and the way Ethiopian pilgrims walk those passages during Timkat is a bodily enactment of what Enoch described. We are going into those passages now. King Lalibela ruled Ethiopia from approximately 1185 to 1225 AD. His reign came shortly after Saladin recaptured Jerusalem in 1187 AD, making Christian pilgrimage to the holy city impossible. For most Ethiopian Christians, Lalibela is said to have received a vision: build a new Jerusalem in Ethiopia. Build it from the living rock. Build it so that Ethiopian Christians can make pilgrimage without crossing the seas. The result is 11 churches carved from a single mass of red volcanic rock, connected by underground passages, courtyards, trenches, and tunnels, some of them narrow enough to require walking single file, hunched in near darkness. Beit Medhain Alim, House of the Savior of the World, the largest of the 11 rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, Ethiopia. Beit equals house, divided by dwelling. Same root as Mahder, dwelling place. Medhane equals Savior divided by Redeemer. Alam equals world divided by age. The house where the one who saves the world dwells. Beit Medhain Alam is carved to a depth of approximately 11.5 meters below the surrounding ground level. It is considered the largest rock-hewn church in the world. Its interior contains 5 aisles, an architectural number some Ethiopian scholars have connected to the 5 sections of the Book of Enoch, the 5 major divisions of the text. The underground passages connecting the Lalibela churches are called processional trenches, and they are used during major feast days for liturgical processions that move from church to church through the underground, symbolizing the passage through sacred thresholds. Lalibela receives approximately 50,000 pilgrims per year for Timkat, Ethiopian Epiphany, January. And Gena, Ethiopian Christmas, January 7th. Pilgrims who walk the processional trenches at night by torchlight in narrow underground passages surrounded by volcanic rock, moving toward the sound of Gez, chanting report, an experience of profound, sacred presence. Ethiopian theologians describe this as a bodily reading of 1 Enoch 22, the body enacting what the text describes. The underground passages of Lalibela are designed to feel like thresholds. They are not comfortable. They are not wide. They are carved to create exactly the experience of passing through a narrow place between two states, between the open air and the sacred interior, between the mundane and the holy, between this side and the other side. Walking through them is a bodily enactment of what Enoch's text describes, moving through the hollow places in the mountain, passing from one chamber to the next, guided by the sound of the chanting ahead, the carved walls, the volcanic rock, smooth and dark, the narrow passage, the lamplight ahead. Enoch, descending into the west, the righteous facing east, the spring running somewhere deeper in the mountain. There is a lectio divina practice in the Ethiopian monastic tradition called walking the text, in which a passage of scripture is read aloud while the reader physically moves through a sacred space. The underground passages of Lalibela were designed for exactly this practice. Monks walk the processional trenches reading from 1 Enoch, the narrow stone walls on either side, the sky visible as a strip of dark blue above, the sound of their own breath in the enclosed space, and somewhere ahead always, somewhere ahead, the lamplight of the next church, the sound of chanting, the smell of incense. This is the four-chamber theology, made architectural, made walkable, made into a path your body can follow, so that your mind does not have to carry it alone. Tonight, dear friend, you cannot walk to Lalibela, but you can do what the monks do, in the quiet of the dark. You can let the text walk through you, instead of you walking through it. You have been in the chambers tonight. You have heard the spring. You have met the keeper and the guide. You have stood at the entrance to Abel's testimony. You have heard the announcement that was made in the darkness between Friday and Sunday. You have walked the processional trench in your mind, in the dark, in this night, and somewhere ahead, always somewhere ahead, there is lamplight. If that is you tonight, if you have been walking a narrow passage and cannot quite see the width of it, Lalibela's architects say, the narrowness is intentional. The passage was designed to be tight, because what lies on the other side of it is worth the pressing through. The lamplight is always ahead. The study is done, dear friend. Now we simply be. No more names to remember. No more dates to hold. No more maps to trace. The text is spoken. Now let the silence complete it. Breathe in, slowly. Feel the weight of your body against whatever surface holds you. The pillow under your head. The warmth of your blankets. The familiar dark of your room. You are not in any chamber tonight. You are home. You are safe. But the chambers are real, and the spring in them is running, even now. Even as you close your eyes, let me take you somewhere now, dear friend. Not to study, not to examine, just to rest inside an image. Imagine that you are standing at the entrance to a stone monastery in the highlands, High up where the air is thin and cold and clean, the stone walls are dark, worn smooth by centuries of hands that have touched them, by centuries of rain, because it is raining now, a slow, quiet, Ethiopian highland rain, the kind that does not arrive with thunder, the kind that simply begins, as if the sky remembered it meant to do this, and finally got around to it. The sound of rain on stone, that is the only sound. Soft, steady, unhurried. The rain does not knock on the door. It simply settles on the walls, on the courtyard, on the ancient carved cross above the entrance, and inside, just barely visible through the open door, a lamp. One lamp, burning, steady. Someone is awake in there. Someone has been awake for a long time. Not anxiously, not urgently, but watchfully, the way Remiel watches. You step inside. The stone floor is cold under your feet, but the lamplight is warm, and the warmth reaches you across the small room. Even before you move toward it, rain on the roof now, softer even than outside, the thick stone muffling it, down to a whisper, down to almost nothing, just a presence above you, patient and unhurried and kind. The monk near the lamp does not look up. He is reading, slowly, his lips moving almost without sound. He has been reading the same passage for many years. He does not hurry it. He does not need to finish it. He reads because the reading itself is the practice, because the words, moving through him slowly, are doing something in him that faster reading cannot do, something that takes time, something that requires the quiet, something that needs the rain and the lamplight and the late hour. You find a place near the wall. The stone is cool against your back, but not uncomfortable. There is a worn blanket folded nearby. You take it and wrap it around your shoulders, and you sit, and you listen to the rain and to the almost silent voice of the monk reading. And slowly, the chambers begin to feel less far away. The lamp has been burning for a long time, longer than this night, longer than this year, longer than any single life that has passed through this room. It is one lamp in one monastery, on one highland ridge in one corner of Ethiopia, but it stands for all the lamps in all the monasteries, all the rooms where someone has chosen, tonight, to stay awake with the ancient text, to read it slowly, to receive it rather than study it, to let the words about the chambers and the spring settle into the body rather than only the mind. The lamp flame moves a little, a breath from somewhere, a small shift in the air, but it does not go out. It has never gone out. Across 17 centuries of Ethiopian Christianity, across every night of uncertainty and persecution, and political upheaval and highland drought and flood, the lamp in the monastery has not gone out, because someone has always chosen to keep it lit. You can see the lamp from where you are sitting, its small circle of warmth, in the larger dark of the stone room, and it is enough, more than enough, for tonight. The monk is still reading. You cannot understand the words. They are in Ge'ez, the ancient language of the Ethiopian highlands, the language of the 8-1 book canon, the language in which the 4-chamber passage has been read aloud in this monastery, or one like it, for more than 1,000 years. You do not need to understand the words. The sound of them is enough. Ge'ez has a rhythm, a cadence that does not hurry, a weight to each syllable that demands patience. It is a language that sounds like it is being spoken by someone who has all the time in the world, by someone who is not afraid of silence, who places the words into it gently, on nebion, and lets the silence close around them. You feel your shoulders drop. You did not realize they were tense. They often are at the end of a day, but the gears, reading, the rain on the roof, the lamplight at the steady yellow distance. Something in you is releasing, not forced to, not instructed to, just released. The way a breath releases at the end of its journey, quietly, completely, without needing to be told. Mahder. You heard that word at the beginning of this night. Now you have walked through what it means. 4 dwelling places, 4 prepared chambers, 4 forms of holding, each one built for a different kind of waiting, and one of them, deep in the hard, bright rock, facing east, has a spring, living water, moving water, the sound of something that will not stop. There is a martyr for the righteous. There is a martyr for those whose accounting was deferred. There is a martyr where Abel's voice still petitions. There is a martyr for the complexly situated, the ones who carried too much to sort out in a single lifetime. And there is Remiel, standing at the threshold, knowing every chamber, keeping every soul. And there is Raphael, ready to explain. Whatever you need explained. Whatever you are carrying tonight, dear friend. Whatever category of the 4 chambers speaks most directly to the place you find yourself in, there is a martyr for that. A dwelling place. Prepared. Kept. Watched over. You do not have to carry it into sleep. You can leave it in the monastery doorway, in the care of the rain, and the lamplight, and the 17 centuries of prayer that have been spoken for exactly this kind of night. Somewhere, beneath the monastery floor, beneath the volcanic rock, beneath the foundations, beneath everything that has been built and carved and named, there is water, not still, not stored, moving, coming from somewhere no one has found, going somewhere no one can trace, but present, audible, if you are still enough, constant, whether you can hear it or not. The spring in chamber 1, running since before you were born, running during every season you have lived through, running on the nights that felt impossible, running on the mornings that felt like mercy, running. This is what the text was trying to tell you. Not a theological formula, not a doctrinal position, just this, that beneath everything, at the deepest point of the prepared place, there is water, and it runs, and it will be running when you wake in the morning, and when you sleep tomorrow night, and in every chamber prepared for every soul that the ancient tradition says has never been abandoned. The spring runs. Let it run through you now, into your sleep, into your rest, into the part of you that has been waiting for permission to simply stop. Stop. The spring is running. You can let everything else be still. The morning is coming. It always comes. And when it does, dear friend, you will not remember every word from tonight. You are not supposed to. But something settled. Something about the spring. Something about the chambers being prepared. Something about a keeper who does not sleep, and a healer who explains that something will still be there in the morning. You do not have to hold it. It holds you. Sleep now. The spring is running. The lamp in the monastery is lit. and the morning will come in its time. Amen. Before I release you fully into sleep, I want to do one last pastoral act. I want to apply the 4 chambers, not to the afterlife, not to the dead, but tonight, to you. Because the 4 chambers of 1 Enoch 22 are not only a map of where the dead go, they are a mirror for the living. Every one of us, at different points in our lives, inhabits the emotional and spiritual reality that each chamber describes. There are seasons of Chamber 1 energy in a living life. Seasons where the spring seems to be running, where faithfulness has found its footing, where the conscience is relatively clean and the path is clear. Not perfect, no living person has a perfect season, but oriented, facing east. Those seasons feel like grace, and they are. Receive them when they come, dear friend. Do not explain them away. Do not immediately search for what must be wrong. When the spring runs, drink from it. There are seasons of Chamber 2 watching. When you have spent years watching impunity operate around you, when the people who caused harm walked away untouched, when the scales you were taught to trust have seemed stubbornly stuck on the wrong side, the 4-chamber framework asks you to do something very hard in those seasons, to release the keeping of the account. Not because the account does not exist. It does. Chamber 2 exists precisely because it does, but because the keeping of it is not your assignment. The keeping of it will hollow you out if you try to do it yourself. There is a chamber for that. There is a keeper for that chamber, and the account will be maintained without requiring you to carry it. There are seasons of Chamber 3 living, when something was taken from you, when you were the Abel in a story you did not choose, when your voice has been crying out and no one seemed to hear it. 1 Enoch 22 says, "The suit is filed. The case is open. The voice crying from Chamber 3 is heard in the heavenly court." Your version of that voice is heard too, not someday. Now, in the continuous present tense that the text uses for Abel, make suit present tense. Your suit is also in the present tense. And there are seasons of Chamber 4, seasons of complexity and moral entanglement. Seasons where you cannot easily place yourself in the category of the righteous, where you have both received harm and caused it, where the accounting of your own life feels too tangled to bring before any court without embarrassment. The 4-chamber framework does not ask you to simplify that complexity before you present it. It has already built a room for the tangled ones. It has already said they have enough. They have experienced enough of their own complexity as consequence, and the judgment that comes will be precise enough to see both what they caused and what was done to them. You are not too complex for the geography. The geography was built for you. 1 Enoch 20 gives us the 7 archangels and their specific domains. It is worth knowing all 7, because each one covers a dimension of human spiritual existence that the reduced Western list of 3 cannot address. Uriel, over the world and over Tartarus. He governs both the visible world and the realm beneath it, the threshold between the earth we walk and the chambers beneath. Raphael, over the spirits of men. He governs the inner life, the soul's health, the capacity to understand what we are looking at. He heals by explaining. Raguel takes vengeance on behalf of the luminaries. He governs the cosmic order, the justice of the created order itself, when that order has been violated. Michael, set over the best part of mankind and over chaos. He governs the war between what is best in us and the chaos that surrounds it. The most active angel in human history, Raphael, set over the spirits who sin in the spirit. He governs the inner spiritual failures, the sins that no one sees, that damage the soul from the inside. Gabriel, over paradise and the serpents and the cherubim. He governs the place of original blessing, the dangers that surrounded it, and the divine guardians who protect what is most sacred. Remiel, whom God set over those who rise. He governs the waiting dead and their resurrection. Together, these 7 cover the complete span of human existence. Cosmic order above, chaos below, inner life, outer choices, the garden that was lost, the dead who wait, the living who struggle. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church retained all 7, and so no dimension of the human spiritual experience is left without an angelic governor. No part of the created world is unguarded. No category of the dead is unwatched. The complete map, preserved in the highlands, held in the Gears language, available tonight in this room through the Book of Enoch, that a shepherd boy's thrown stone brought back into the light. The rain is still falling on the monastery. You have not moved from your place against the wall. The blanket is still around your shoulders. The monk is still reading. The lamp is still burning. Nothing has changed. And that is the point. Some things do not change during the night. Some presences remain constant, regardless of whether you are awake or asleep. The rain falls whether you hear it or not. The lamp burns whether you can see it or not. The monk reads whether you are conscious of the words or not. The spring runs whether you can sense it or not. Remiel keeps the threshold whether you know his name or not. This is the comfort that the 4-chamber tradition offers. Not that everything will be resolved tonight. Not that the accounting will be completed by morning. Not that the complexity of your life will be simplified by the time the sun rises. But that while you sleep, the things that need watching are being watched. The keeper is at the threshold. The healer is available. The spring is running. The suit is active. The lamp is lit. And you, dear friend, you can simply sleep without guarding anything, without keeping any account, without solving any problem, for these hours, in this darkness, in the company of the rain and the lamplight and the ancient voice that has been reading long before you arrived and will be reading long after you have gone to sleep. Sleep now. The monastery walls are thick. The rain is kind. The chambers are tended. The spring runs. And the morning when it comes will find you rested, held, kept, known. One of the hardest questions any thoughtful person carries is not whether justice exists, but why it is so slow. Pause, breathe. We have all watched something unjust happen, and we have all experienced the specific anguish of watching the person responsible continue to prosper, continue to sleep, continue to move through the world as though nothing occurred. The 4-chamber model in 1 Enoch 22 does not ignore this. It was written by people who knew this anguish intimately. The ancient Hebrews under foreign occupation, the Ethiopian Christians under pressure and persecution, the communities at Qumran who fled into the wilderness rather than compromise their integrity. All of them looked at the gap between injustice and consequences, and they did not pretend the gap wasn't there. They looked directly into it, and they said, "There is a reason for the delay. Not because God is absent, not because justice is weak, but because justice, when it comes, will be accurate." This is one of the most pastorally significant dimensions of the four-chamber framework. It offers language for what theologians call the problem of theodicy, the problem of why a good and powerful God permits suffering and apparent injustice to continue. Theodicy from the Greek theos, God, and dike, justice, has occupied some of the sharpest minds in religious history. Job argued it from a dung heap. Psalm 73 wrestled it from the position of a man who nearly stumbled watching the wicked prosper. Habakkuk shouted it from a watchtower. But the Enochic tradition, the tradition preserved in the Ethiopian highlands and recovered from the Dead Sea Scrolls, offers something those other traditions sometimes leave implicit. It offers a map, a geography of waiting, a structured holding space, where the accounting is not yet complete, but where nothing has been forgotten. Chamber 2, the chamber for those who prospered while others suffered, is not a chamber of punishment. Not yet. It is a chamber of preservation, of precise record-keeping, of what the tradition calls waiting for the day of judgment. The distinction matters enormously, because it means that when consequences come, they will not be approximate, they will not be generalized, they will not mistake one person for another. The spring that runs pure in the western portion of Sheol is not a metaphor for vague comfort. It is a specific image of life maintained in integrity, of souls who did not compromise, being held in a kind of preserved dignity, while the accounting for others is being completed. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church used this framework not to frighten people, but to stabilize them. To say to a community living under pressure, your suffering is not invisible, your integrity is not forgotten, the structure of what comes after death is not arbitrary. It reflects the same moral precision that the created order reflects. Frumentius, the Phoenician-born monk who brought Christianity to the Aksumite Empire in the 4th century AD, came into a tradition that already had a sophisticated theology of the dead. The Gehazi manuscripts he encountered had been preserving frameworks like the four-chamber model long before Latin Christianity solidified its own doctrines at the Council of Carthage in 397 AD. When the Council of Carthage finalized the Western biblical canon and excluded the Book of Enoch, they were not suppressing something primitive. They were setting aside something that, from the Ethiopian perspective, was extraordinarily sophisticated. A framework for moral complexity, a geography for the human condition after death, a pastoral tool for communities who needed to know that precision, not power, governs what comes next. This is why, dear friend, when you lie down tonight and the questions about justice come, and they will come because they always come in the quiet, you can let them come without panic. Not because the questions are small, but because the framework that holds them is large enough. The chambers are ordered. The accountant is thorough. The spring runs pure. The keeper is at the threshold, and justice, when it arrives, will be exactly what the situation required. Not approximate, not lazy, not confused. Exact. In 1896, a Cambridge scholar named Solomon Schechter climbed a ladder into a sealed chamber in the Ben Ezra Synagogue in Fustat, Egypt. What he found changed our understanding of the living transmission of ancient texts. The Cairo Geniza, from the Hebrew word meaning to hide or to store, was a room where Jewish communities had deposited worn-out sacred texts for centuries. Because the name of God appeared in these documents, they could not be destroyed. So they were stored, accumulating over 1,000 years, filling the chamber floor to ceiling. Schechter descended with more than 100,000 manuscript fragments. Among them were fragments that connected to the same textual traditions that had been preserved in the Ethiopian highlands and that would later be confirmed by the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in 1947. The Cairo Geniza fragments included early Hebrew versions of texts that Ethiopian scholars had maintained in Ge'ez translation for centuries, texts that Western Christianity had set aside, texts that the Council of Carthage's canon had not found a place for, but here they were, surviving in Egypt, surviving in the Ethiopian highlands, surviving in the caves above Qumran, surviving in multiple streams simultaneously. This is what scholars of textual transmission call the multiple attestation principle. When a tradition is preserved in several independent streams, it increases the probability that the tradition reflects something genuinely ancient, rather than a later invention. The four-chamber model is attested in an Enoch, Ethiopian manuscript tradition, Dead Sea Scrolls, Qumran, Hebrew and Aramaic, Cairo Geniza fragments, Hebrew, 2 Baruch, Syriac tradition, various Second Temple period texts, 5 independent streams, all preserving the same geography, all pointing to the same 4 hollow places beneath the earth, all preserving the cry of Abel, all preserving the spring that runs pure in the chamber of the righteous. What does it mean that so many traditions independently preserve this map? It means at minimum that it was important enough to be worth preserving. It was not incidental, not a footnote, not a speculation. It was, for the communities who kept these texts, a foundational description of where the dead wait and why the waiting is not arbitrary. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church did not preserve the Book of Enoch because they were behind the times. They preserved it because they understood that some texts carry weight that outlasts any single council's decision about canonicity. The Ge'ez language, the oldest Semitic language, with an unbroken literary tradition, was the vessel that carried this weight. Mahder AT, the sacred archive, the dwelling place of preserved truth, was what the monks of Lake Tana were maintaining when they copied these manuscripts by lamplight. Tonight, as you lie in the quiet, you are connected to that chain of preservation. You are one link in a transmission that runs from the shepherd boys of Qumran to the monks of Lake Tana, to Solomon Schechter on his ladder in Egypt, to the scholars who photographed the Dead Sea Scrolls, to this room, this night, this voice. The text survived because people thought it was worth surviving. And they were right. The map of the 4 chambers is worth knowing. The cry of Abel is worth hearing. The spring that runs pure is worth finding. And the keeper at the threshold, Remiel, the mercy of God, is worth knowing by name. You know his name now. That is not nothing. It is, dear friend, perhaps the most important thing you will carry out of this night. A name, a mare, a keeper, a spring, and the knowledge that the text survived, because truth, like water, finds its way through stone. To understand why 1 Enoch 22 carries the weight that it does, we need to step into the world that produced it. The Second Temple period, roughly 530 BCE to 70 CE, was one of the most theologically productive eras in religious history. The First Temple, Solomon's Temple, had been destroyed by the Babylonians in 587 BCE. The Jewish community experienced exile, and in exile, they asked the hardest questions. If God is just, why did this happen? If the covenant is real, why does it appear broken? If justice governs the universe, where is it? The return from exile and the construction of the Second Temple did not silence those questions. It intensified them, because the restored community found themselves under successive foreign occupations: Persian, Greek, Seleucid, and finally Roman. Each occupation raised the same question in a new form. Why do the powerful prosper while the faithful suffer? Into this environment, the Enochic literature emerged, not as escapism, but as cosmological framework. If you want to understand why things are wrong here, look at what happened there, in the heavens, among the Watchers, before human history began. And if you want to understand why justice is delayed, look at what happens after death, in the 4 chambers beneath the earth, where the dead wait for the day of accounting. This was not primitive theology. This was sophisticated cosmological reasoning in response to genuine historical suffering. The community at Qumran, the community of the Dead Sea Scrolls, were almost certainly Essenes, a Jewish sect who had withdrawn from Jerusalem because they believed the temple had been corrupted. They took their copies of 1 Enoch into the desert. They preserved chapter 22 alongside the Torah, alongside Isaiah, alongside the Psalms. They considered the Enochic geography of the dead to be scripture. When Jude 1, 14 inches the New Testament, quotes 1 Enoch directly. Enoch, the 7th from Adam, prophesied. It is referencing a text that the Qumran community had treated as scripture for at least a century before the New Testament was written. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church points to this as evidence that the Book of Enoch's exclusion from the Western canon at the Council of Carthage in 397 AD was a late decision. Note en ancien consensus. The council was not wrong to organize the canon. Organization has its value. But the Ethiopian tradition is right to note that something was set aside that had once been central, and what was set aside was precisely this: a nuanced, morally complex, pastorally rich geography of what happens after death. Not a simple binary. Not just heaven and hell, but 4 chambers, 4 conditions, 4 responses to 4 different moral situations. The Book of Jubilees, another text preserved in Ethiopian Ge'ez and confirmed by the Dead Sea Scrolls, reinforces the Enochic framework by presenting a cosmic calendar that situates human moral history within a precisely ordered divine structure. Both Enoch and Jubilees point in the same direction. The universe is morally ordered. Justice is not arbitrary, and the accounting when it comes will be thorough. This is what the Second Temple period gave us. Not a single answer to the problem of suffering, but a structured framework for holding the question. And that framework, dear friend, is available to you tonight. not as intellectual exercise, but as rest, because if the chambers are ordered, if the accounting is proceeding, if the keeper is at the threshold, then you can release the weight of trying to calculate justice yourself. That accounting is not your work. Your work tonight is simply this: breathe, be held, sleep. The universe will handle the rest. The morning is coming. It always comes. Right now, on the other side of the darkness you're in, the light is already preparing itself. The dawn is already beginning its slow approach toward your window. And between now and then, between this darkness and that light, you are held, kept by something older than your questions, carried by something larger than your uncertainty. Sleep, dear friend. The spring runs tonight in the chamber of the righteous. The keeper holds the threshold, and the morning when it comes, and it is coming, will find you rested, whole, and ready. Mahder. The archive holds all things safe. Good night.